Jim Hanson, described as a former U.S. Army Special Forces officer and Middle East strategist, discussing the possibility of a ground operation to seize Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. The segment aired on Jesse Waters' program and included discussion of directed energy weapons, Kharg Island, and the endgame of Operation Epic Fury.
Jim Hanson, former U.S. Army Special Forces and the chief strategist for the Middle East Forum. Jim, how confident are you that the U.S. could pull off some sort of uranium extraction under enemy fire?
We can absolutely do it. And I think I want to tell all the IRGC leadership now who's watching this show that don't doubt President Trump has the resolve to make that call. You know, and I mean, at some level, I have a wish to see. I want the choppers coming in, hitting the beach, you know, blaring Ride of the Valkyrie, Ghost of Robert Duvall in the lead helicopter, and the discombobulator blazing their way to knock everybody out of the way. The problem is from the beach to the places we have to go is almost 500 miles. And that's a heck of a logistical nightmare. It's not quite as simple. It can be done, and we have the capabilities and the people to do it. But I think everyone should be cognizant that's a heavy lift.
It is. And, you know, you don't want to trivialize it like, I'll go and take the uranium, but what kind of close air support, consistent close air support, would an operation like that require deep inside Iranian airspace?
Yeah, I would be less worried that they would send like a reaction force to try and, you know, okay, we go, we surround it, we drop the 82nd in, they surround the compound, you know, the SEALs, Delta, whoever, the Rangers, everybody go in and start, you know, searching the compound. But they're not going to send a force to try and fight that because they know we have air supremacy. We'll kill anybody who comes. But they can send drone swarms and all of that. And what those guys won't have a lot of is air defense. So that's the big weakness, is it's hard to defend against a bunch of drones. And we might have to try and find a way to bring in some air defense with them to keep it clear long enough to actually do what needs to be done, find that stuff, get it on a bird, and get out of there.
So is there risk for fallout? I'm not a nuclear physicist, but if the Iranians just start, I don't know, just lobbing everything they have at these two remaining nuke sites, is that crazy town?
Well, as Secretary Rubio said, this is an apocalyptic death cult. You know, the 12er Shia Islam believes they need that Armageddon-like event to bring back their Mahdi and rule the world. So you can't say they won't do it. And if they somehow manage to hit or do that, you've got the equivalent of a dirty bomb. All our guys would be in deep trouble. But again, you know, that's a nightmare scenario if it happens. Better case scenario is we get a tip, you know, and either Mossad or the CIA turn somebody or buy somebody and they tell us exactly where it is and maybe even bring it out for us. You know, there's a lot of ways this could go. I think there are better ways than a raid, but no one should ever doubt that if it comes down to it, President Trump's going to get that job done.
Yeah, I think the raid, obviously, you're right, is the last option. What have you heard about the discombobulator? Because I hadn't heard anything in that much detail since Halpern said it made everybody yak.
You know, there's a lot of directed energy weapons that we've had for a while, and we've tested them. There's some that can make you feel heat. You know, there's sound waves that can make you just freak out and discombobulate you. What exactly they're using and what was used in Venezuela has not been publicly announced. It's just one of those things that we have that makes it a big advantage, because when you are going into a place where the enemy knows where you're coming, you don't want to lead with your face. You know, that's a cardinal rule of door-kicking operations.
Yeah.
Have something in front of you for that. So that's why you throw flashbangs in a room. This is a directed energy flashbang to blow everybody's mind and hopefully get our guys in and safely back out.
Yeah, I learned that in boxing. Never lead with your face, Jim. The Iranian regime, what's left of it, do you think they are capable of withstanding another 2-week aerial pounding, or will it take some sort of lightning-fast ground operation on Kharg, on an island, on the Strait, to really force their hand?
I think leverage is needed. You know, we've bombed so much that we either need to turn up the volume on what we're bombing, you know, turn it to 11 on the targets, or to do something that causes them potentially more damage. Their economy is a shambles. And without the revenue they're getting from oil out of Kharg Island, they're toast. So whether you go and seize it or whether you just blockade and say any ship that tanks up at Kharg Island, thank you for that, we'll take your oil, as President Trump mentioned. Any of those are going to put the pressure on them, and I think one of those things is going to be needed to push them over the edge.
And you see the next couple weeks as being basically the fourth quarter?
Yeah, we're coming to the end, and President Trump said we're going to do 4 to 6 weeks. We have done, our target list is down into smaller, we're going to have 3 digits now left on the target list, and they're ready to go ahead and move to the next step, which is finishing off, opening up the Strait of Hormuz to traffic, taking care of the uranium, and then figuring out who is going to be in charge to hopefully lead Iran to a more prosperous future.
All right, Jim, great to talk to you as always. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Let's separate fact from fantasy. This is not speculation. At a congressional briefing, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was asked whether Iran's enriched uranium would be secured. People are going to have to go and get it, he said, without specifying who. Two sources with knowledge of the issue told Axios that such operations were part of a menu of options presented to Trump before the war began. President Trump is weighing the option of deploying special forces to seize Iran's near-bomb-grade uranium, as officials grow increasingly concerned the stockpile may have been moved. According to 3 diplomatic officials, Trump himself did not rule it out, saying, "At some point maybe we will. We haven't gone after it. We wouldn't do it now. Maybe we will do it later." The scale of what's at stake is enormous. Iran possesses roughly 450 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, enough, if enriched to 90% purity, for approximately 11 nuclear weapons. It also holds more than 8,000 kilograms of uranium enriched to lower levels that Hanson's Apocalypse Now imagery, choppers blaring Ride of the Valkyries, was entertainment, not analysis. But his core point about the logistical nightmare is well supported. CBS News reported that an operation to seize Iran's nuclear stockpile would be more difficult and complex than anything U.S. Special Operations Forces have ever attempted. At least half the material is stored far underground in Iran's Isfahan facility, deep in the interior of the country, with the rest likely at Natanz, some 70 miles away. The comparison to the Bin Laden raid understates the challenge enormously. The 2011 raid on Bin Laden's compound took approximately 38 minutes. Securing Iran's nuclear stockpile could take many hours, possibly days. The material is stored in dozens of specialized cylinders, each requiring careful handling and protective transport casks. Experts estimate 40 to 50 such containers would need to be moved, enough to fill multiple transport vehicles, and the operation could take several days or even a full week. There is also a critical problem Hanson mentioned only in passing. Iran blocked all entrances to the underground complex at Isfahan in February, filling tunnels with earth and burying the entrances, meaning U.S. forces would need to excavate access points before even reaching the material. Several hundred U.S. Special Operations troops, including Army Rangers and Navy SEALs, have arrived in the region, according to the New York Times, joining thousands of Marines and Army paratroopers. The main U.S. military contingent for a nuclear seizure mission would likely be highly specialized units of Delta Force trained in rendering safe nuclear materials, flown in from naval ships in the Arabian Sea, nearly 1,000 miles away. Defense analysts say even targeted operations like extracting nuclear materials carry the risk of evolving into something larger. Dan Grazier at the Stimson Center warned that the Iranians are going to do whatever they can to kill and capture as many Americans as they can for the propaganda victory alone. Hanson claimed Iran's Shia ideology means they might welcome an Armageddon-like event and deliberately irradiate their own territory, citing Secretary Rubio's similar characterization. This is an oversimplification that borders on Islamophobic troping. While there are theological hardliners within Iran's power structure, mainstream Shia scholarship does not endorse the deliberate destruction of one's own people as a path to the return of the Mahdi. Attributing apocalyptic suicidal intent to an entire religious tradition is not analysis. It is fear-mongering. That said, the dirty bomb risk from a military standpoint is real. If the uranium stockpile is struck by conventional weapons during a chaotic ground fight, contamination is a serious possibility that military planners must account for. Hanson referenced what we used in Venezuela, an allusion to the widely discussed but unconfirmed claims that directed energy or sonic weapons were used during the capture of Nicolas Maduro on January 3, 2026. Trump referred to a weapon he called the discombobulator, saying it made equipment not work during the capture. But a senior U.S. official told CNN he was likely conflating several capabilities into a single weapon that doesn't exist. He alleged use of a sonic weapon in Venezuela remains unproven. There is no solid evidence that such a system exists in operational U.S. service, let alone that it was deployed during that mission. However, the Department of War confirmed plans to expand the use of directed energy weapons, posting on X. Yes, the Department of War has directed energy weapons. Yes, we are scaling them. Hanson presented these weapons as if their operational deployment were a confirmed fact. It is not. This matters because discussing unverified capabilities on national television as established fact feeds adversary paranoia and undermines the credibility of genuine military analysis. Hanson claimed we are in the fourth quarter and that the target list is down to 3 digits. Trump has indeed stated a 4 to 6 week timeline for the operation. However, the Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Iran continues launching missiles daily. Negotiations have stalled, and the administration is now discussing weeks of additional ground operations. Military analysts caution that rather than seeking decisive engagement, Iranian forces would likely avoid conventional confrontation and stretch the conflict over time, making the conflict costly and prolonged. The gap between the fourth quarter and an actual, definable end to this conflict remains vast. This segment was among the most troubling I have reviewed throughout this conflict, not because the underlying topic is fabricated, but because of how it was presented. The possibility of a U.S. Special Forces raid to seize Iran's enriched uranium is real. It is being discussed at the highest levels of the U.S. government and reported by credible outlets including the Wall Street Journal, Axios, CBS News, Fortune, and Defense News. It deserves serious, sober coverage. What it received instead was a segment that treated one of the most dangerous military operations conceivable, deep inside hostile territory, involving weapons-grade nuclear material under drone and missile threat, as something akin to an action movie pitch. Hanson opened by invoking Robert Duvall's helicopter scene from Apocalypse Now. He described a mission that experts say could take a week under fire as something we can absolutely do. He referenced directed energy weapons used in Venezuela as if their existence were established fact when no independent verification exists. And he invoked a distorted version of Shia eschatology to suggest Iran's leadership might deliberately irradiate its own territory, a claim that conflates theological fringe elements with national decision-making. The host, Jesse Waters, to his credit, did push back on the complexity of the mission and asked